Hey everybody, welcome. Today on the line, I have the beautiful and talented actress from both film, stage, as well as television, Cara Ricketts. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
So real quick, before we even jump into it, let the people know which island you represent.
Jamaica, through and through.
Awesome, awesome. And where are you from?
I am born in Canada, but my mom's from Prembacol and my dad's from Clarendon.
Awesome,
Kingston. My
awesome.
auntie just said Kingston.
Yes, yes, get it right, get it right. So I'm gonna ask, what does your culture mean to you?
It means a lot, especially growing up in being a first generation Canadian. It was definitely a bridge between the two, like respecting my Jamaican heritage, which was taught to me through my parents, and also hearing that language at home. I would go to school and be made fun of. Like, you'd go to school and you're like, oh, is that a vegetable? And they're like, no, it's vegetable. Make yourself
Girl,
comfortable. No, it's comfortable. So as far as I'm concerned, I am Jamaican, and it's just
mm,
Jamaican, but viewed through a Canadian lens. So the two begin to meet at me in an interesting way.
awesome. No, trust me, I get it. Like with the code switching and the mispronunciation of words, and you don't even recognize that you're doing it. Been
Exactly.
there.
Exactly. And it's
And
important because then you have to find out where you fit and how you fit, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And how does your culture impact the work that you do?
Um, I think it's also understood in the same way that I had just mentioned. Like, I think when I get hired, I'm hired for a certain visibility, but um, my culture is going to be interpreted or reflected in the way I handle the text or the way that I show up at work, because it's inside of me already, you know? So it's like,
Yes.
it might be it might not be exactly like, when Jamaicans come to Canada, and then there's all these first generation Canadian kids who are like, my guy, and like all this kind of stuff. And they make fun of us because they're like, you're not doing it right, but we are doing it right. We're doing it right in our way. And I think that that's what my work also does, that it's just a reflection of my foundation, which is a Jamaican foundation, as well as so many other parts if we go deeper into history. But it's definitely a part of who I am. And so that then is translated through me and into my work.
Awesome. No, I totally get that. And for you being a performing artist, how has the pandemic affected you in terms of your work, and how are you coping with that?
I'm not.
That's real. That's real.
It's made, it's been interesting because I travel a lot for my work. Like,
Hmm.
I'll be in Montreal, or I'll be in New York, or I'll be in Serbia. Like, I'm always moving because of my work. And in an interesting way, it's made everyone remote. So it's taken, there's some of the communication has been made easier because we're all remote now, as opposed to going, we need her over here just to have a conversation.
Right.
So that's been interesting. But at the same time, I desperately miss traveling. I desperately miss being out of the house. And also it's made it creatively exciting, because
Hmm.
I now have friends who are available to sit down and read, a script that we haven't been able to read before, and we'll do it on Zoom. And so I think it's definitely opened my eyes up to uh, other potential ways to get together and create work. But I do also miss being in a different place. I miss crowds. I miss an audience,
Yes.
that you can actually see. And even this, like us having this meeting here, is cool, but there's something about being in the room together and feeling the energy, like knowing, oh,
Yes,
we're both on the same page, or,
absolutely. The vibes.
yeah, definitely. Sometimes it can feel like you're talking in an echo chamber with your thoughts when it comes to Zoom, and you're like, I hope everybody's still with me.
Yes, I get that.
Yeah.
Believe me, I get that. So as a first gen, and I know you have a lot of experience, obviously navigating Canada, but the U.S. as well. Have you ever felt a pressure to be more American or like North American and kind of like distance yourself from your culture?
Absolutely. Especially starting out in the theater, there's this, it's necessary. I mean, even as I say this, I'm like, is it actually necessary? I don't know. But they say like enunciation and all of these things. So the kind of slang, and especially like with patois, like it's a slang of English and African languages. And then you come to Toronto and you've got, again, slang, which is like the word is purposefully meshed and pushed together
Right.
so that it's faster. And sometimes it's done that way so that white people don't understand what we're saying, or that, like,
Facts.
and I won't even say white people, let's say like economically people who are in different places, the person who's in charge and running things won't necessarily know what we're saying. And theater is all about making things crisp and clear, but also making it sound a certain way. And I've done so much of that that even now, sometimes when I hear myself, I'm like, this is my new voice. I know I didn't sound like this. I know I didn't, but I think as time changes and society changes, the voice changes too. It all depends on where you end up in terms of like an economic culture or a work culture. Because I also think of like the Kardashians and how they're all like right here in this, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so my work ended up taking me to a place where I would train, they would train me to speak with hitting consonants and vowels and having a certain, like we would talk about certain accents and when to use them. So my work was all about dismantling a particular culture that I was raised with, and then preparing myself to performance, showing that other side of it. And I had done that for years. And also I worked at a festival for 4 years that was all about having a near British English accent in a way, without actually being, they didn't want to go that far, but they come from the history of having that kind of sound. And so by the time I got back home from working there for 4 months, I remember my sister looking at me going like, yo, what's wrong with you, guy? Like, where's your, what happened to your voice?
Right.
Like, why do you sound like that? And yeah, like it's totally removing a level of yourself. And in my case, I feel like if I were to go back to it, it would be a fight for it, or sometimes I'll slip into it depending on how emotional I am in a situation. But yeah, it was a lot of purposefully removing that I went to theater school too, and it was all about purposefully removing that. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And it's hard. It's so ingrained into the system, you don't clock it. But it's been
Hmm.
great. Like if I have problems, I don't address, like if I go to a store and I have a problem with an employee, I don't address the employee there. I go home and I Karen it. I'm like, hello, employee, blah, blah, blah. I would like to speak to your manager. And it's like
Yep.
the voice has been quite
It's a
helpful.
weapon. It's
Yeah,
powerful.
it is. It really is. Yeah.
Wow. So again, you have experience with film and television as well as stage. So I know a lot of artists do not get the privilege to like have both experiences. What would you say are some of the main differences? Is there an avenue you prefer more?
I like them both at the moment. I really do. I find that they both are they're both really fantastic. What I love about theater is that it's kind of immediate. It goes back to how I was saying, if we were doing this interview in a room together, we could feel vibes. But
Right.
with it's theaters like that, you can feel vibes in a room of like 500 people or more, which is really exciting, or like 20 people. It depends on how big the house is. And then you learn your techniques on how to use the room so that things sound bigger or smaller and all of that. Film and TV is totally different. Film and TV is back to like the Zoom thing where it's you give your performance, the director helps you through the performance, but then an editor will come and be like, I like this version that she did here better than that. And then Frankenstein the performance together. So they've taken the work that you've done and put it together the way they felt in the story, and then gives it to the audience. So it's always really exciting to watch a film or a television project that I've been in, just to see what I end up doing, because they're not
Hmm.
necessarily the same choices that I made in the room at that time together. but I love them both. I find them so fascinating because with film too, it's a lot about imagery. Like, what does this shot look like, and what are you what's
Right.
happening to you here, and will they catch, even if you are going through a really emotional moment, will they catch that, or will they cut away to your partner who might be giving an equally more interesting or less interesting thing? And yeah, it's really interesting.
Wow,
Hmm.
that's interesting to think about. So
Yeah.
what advice would you give to that young girl who is aspiring to be any type of performer, but maybe doesn't have the support of her parents? Because you know how West Indian parents can be. It's like go to school, take up your book, and you know the whole nine. So what would
Yes.
you say to that little girl who's like, man, I really want to do this, but I don't know if I can, push through.
There's this person that I've been listening to. I'm not going to say his name because I still don't know quite where he's at, but he's like one of these influencers. Like, he gives a lot of um, business ideas and all of these things. And lately, he's been talking a lot about using your time in your 20s, that young age, just before, like, the time right after high school, even before you go into college, which is a lot of other people might use to travel Europe and go backpacking and hosteling. As far as I'm concerned, it sounds in his theory, and it sounds about right. That's the time to take your chances. And, especially when you're a young kid and you realize that you want to do this and you want to be in the arts, I think you should know whether or not you actually want to be in it. A lot of us are into it because it's fame. A lot of us think it's like, oh, we can be a celebrity and blah, 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 blah. But if you feel in your heart that you are an artist, go and run with it, especially during that time. See if the chances that you take to get there are still inside of you. If not, there are tons of other businesses or areas of the business that's still tied to it. Like, there's stage managers, which is the person who organizes and puts the whole things on, or the dresser, who's the person who helps the actor get dressed. And I know it's not like the usual answers to that is like, go and ignore your parents, but
Right?
as someone who has fought, like, I had family members going, what are you doing? Why are you
I can
wasting money
imagine.
towards this? You're going to college for it. And I also know that it's not always the easiest business to get into, but there's so many other avenues now where I have a friend, a family member actually, who he works during the day, but his side hustle is totally online, being an artist. And this avenue, which we are now exploring even more thanks to COVID, everybody's online. So you could be somebody who, like, has puppets and you put on a puppet show. Put that on YouTube and see if you can get an audience. And that way you can still, feel out if you want to follow your Jamaican parents' idea of like the life that you should be living, or if you actually do want to pursue your art. Because it's not, the reason why I'm saying this is because being an artist is not an easy job at all. It is not easy. You'll have high highs and you'll have low lows, and you have a lot of stuff in between. And I think now that we have things like YouTube, like Instagram, like TikTok, there is still the opportunity of pursuing your art, but also making sure that you are financially stable, which is also important, like handling that part of your business. We got to be better about handling our money as a people. You know what I mean? So I'm
Yeah,
up for
that's
that
a
too.
message right there. That's the word right there.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Well, thank you so much. We're down to our final question. I've enjoyed this whole experience, very
Oh, good.
insightful. And so my final question is, how can the West Indian Americans tribe support you?
Well, I am on Instagram, and I'm most active there at the moment. I in my business, I'm in video games. I've got a video game talk coming up on June 13th.
Wow.
I'll be posting more. Yeah, I've done motion capture on 2 video games, which is in the Far Cry series, if anybody plays that. But I also do voice work on video games as well. So I'm
Nice.
going to be talking with the Black Girl Gamer Summit on June 13th on Twitch, and I'll be posting that information to my Instagram. I just got on TikTok. That's for fun. And yeah, so I think if you check out my Instagram, it'll be the best place to find out the new projects that I'm working on. I post fantastic memes like the one that you sent me before everything happened.
It's perfect.
And I think I'm also mentioning it because I am super active on there. I do try to respond to people. So if there's any direct questions that people want to ask me, or if something, this interview kicked off, I'm happy to address it and talk further.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I will post all your social media handles at the end of the video.
Awesome.
And so thank you. Love you lots. I'm proud of you and keep up the good work.
I'm proud of you too. I love your page and thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for inviting me.
Thank you. All right.
All right.
Bye.